Make Peace with Nature is a syndicated public affairs presentation of this station dealing with solutions to problems of energy, conservation, and the environment. Today's program will be hosted by David Serber.
Hello, and welcome to Make Peace with Nature. I should like to begin by presenting a video tribute to my studio guest, Brewster Rhoads, by noted videographer Michael Keating.
What I really like about the sport is it's like a little vacation for an hour. If I have an hour's worth of time, I can jump in my kayak, I can paddle around, and it's just beautiful, it's rewarding, it's relaxing, and it's my best thinking time. What's fascinating about a river, and especially here, the Ohio, in the middle of downtown Cincinnati in northern Kentucky, is people from all walks of life enjoy it. You have people who have means with large and expensive boats, cruising down in downtown right past folks who have a $500 fishing boat with a small engine on it, just enjoying themselves. You see people on the riverbank who maybe spend all night fishing with a little campfire, bringing their kids down, and for those folks, it's their own little vacation. I'm trying to encourage more and more people to recognize the importance of the river and the benefits it brings to this community, the role it can play in attracting people to come and live here. A lot of folks would say to themselves, I had no idea you had this incredible river running right through the heart of this region. And when they see all the things you can do here, it says, hey, this is just like being in San Francisco or Boston or Philadelphia or Baltimore. They have a harbor, have a bay, they have an ocean. We have the Ohio River. It's wonderful. Something we got to take more advantage of. Just a couple of weeks ago, you had the Italian Festival right below Newport on the levee on the banks of the Ohio. You had people running and bicycling across the Purple People Bridge, and now eating dinner on the Purple People Bridge, right, looking down and waving to folks. You had a ball game going on in the Red Stadium, and there were people fishing on the banks on both sides of the river. So you look around, this is like a happening place. It was exciting to see so many people from different walks of life, different sides of the river, enjoying themselves, and the river is the common meeting point. Some people run every day or go to the gym and work out in the machine and watch TV as they're running on the treadmill, Instead, I'll jump in the Ohio River 250, 300 days a year and paddle for an hour, hour and a half, get my heart working and my body moving, and it's a great physical exercise, a great workout. So I feel like, my stress is relieved just like you would if you ran 4 or 5 miles. Paddling underneath the suspension bridge, those cars go by, imagining that, less than 100 years ago, there were, that was the main transportation, non-motorized, with horses pulling folks from one state to the other. Or, just closing my eyes and imagining Lewis and Clark coming down the river right past me and saying hi, And you can go up the Licking River from downtown here, right where it hits the Ohio. You can go like 300 yards up the Licking River, just around a little bit of a bend, and it looks just like it did, I'll bet, in 1803. You don't see any houses, it's just trees and this beautiful river, and it takes you 200 years back. The thing about the river is every day is different. The sun, the water conditions, the waves, the current, the water level. It's almost always changing. It just makes it more interesting as opposed to a kind of boring lake or pond. There's barges going by that are going to end up in New Orleans with stuff that may end up in Asia. It's kind of fascinating. The river itself just, I think, connects us to the rest of the world.
Now, here on the set is Brewster Rhoads, most recently the retired executive director of the Green Umbrella, an organization we have featured frequently by reason of their efforts to make our area greener and more sustainable. Brewster has a BA from Williams College and now carries on his work on our behalf as a consultant and a board member of many important commissions and conservation organizations. More after this.
The views expressed on Make Peace with Nature are those of the participants and not necessarily those of this station or the program's underwriters.
It's a very great pleasure to have as my studio guest, as he has been before, Brewster Rhoads. You have been treated, courtesy of Michael Keating, the noted videographer, to a very nice 4-minute summary of his work and his interests. You and Mr. Keating must have been close friends. He did one, excuse the expression, one hell of a nice job for you.
We had a fun afternoon together. It was great.
You did all that in one afternoon?
He's an incredible photographer.
You produced that in one day?
Well, we had the interview, the discussion on the back of my houseboat, and then of course I jumped in the river and was paddling, and he was taking pictures of me doing it. And then he took time in the studio, of course, to create it. But he's an award-winning photographer, a real jewel for this community.
Mm-hmm. Is he still, does he still function?
Yeah, I mean, he has his own freelance business right now. He's no longer with the Enquirer, as I understand, but Michael is very engaged, doing work for a variety of clients. He's great.
Now, I said that you were the recently retired executive director of the Green Umbrella.
Yeah.
You really took it from a position where it was just a paper organization, in fairness, and you took it to the heights that it...
Well, I had the privilege of being brought on board by folks who wanted to expand the organization called Green Umbrella in 2011 from being, you know, a relatively low visibility, not very highly functioning organization with a name though and a tax status, to something that was more robust and was more effective in engaging more people, organizations and businesses and local governments, nonprofits working collaboratively, David, to help improve the quality of the environment in this region. And so I started out as a 2-month consultant to help design a plan to build the organization, and 4 years later I finally moved on. So it was a great opportunity, an outstanding
When you
board.
left, it went from a paper corporation to what, 300 members?
Yeah, about 300 dues-paying members, again, nonprofits and local governments, universities, and businesses that all cared about making greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky a more green and sustainable metro area in a whole variety of fields, and committed themselves to working together in a very collaborative fashion around very concrete, measurable goals to make that happen.
Right. Under ordinary circumstances, people who I interview would say, we've been working for years to get businesses and nonprofit organizations together, thinking that the two of them were not working together to the same purpose. That's very frequently the case. If somebody comes onto the show from a major environmental group, and then we talk about some Fortune 500 companies in the show, they'll say, we never get to sit down at the table with them. Your work seems somehow, almost magically, to have brought them all under the same, excuse the expression, the same umbrella.
Well, what was key with the development of Green Umbrella was a board of people who had a vision, which was pretty bold and pretty cutting edge nationally, to get folks who have been working as nonprofit organizations around the environment, with the university folks I mentioned, with local governmental entities, with cities and townships and county governments, solid waste districts, but then sitting down as well with business executives whose job it was within their companies to help those companies become more green and sustainable internally, to reduce waste, to reduce energy consumption, to reduce their packaging, et cetera. So it was a big, bold vision, but the good news is it actually has happened and is happening every day better and better under the new director of Green Umbrella, Kristen Weiss, who is doing an outstanding job.
All right, is this a fair question?
Yeah.
On the day you took over, there was a certain level of ozone and particulate matter and sulfur dioxide in the air over the metropolitan area. 1 million people live in this metro, 2 million, I think, 2 million people. Can you say that as a result of your efforts and the efforts of the 300 members, it is a cleaner city in terms of air, water?
You know, David, it's a great question, and
but
frankly,
if it's not a fair question,
well, it's a great question, and it's one that is one of the toughest nuts to crack. And frankly, we cannot claim, the Green Umbrella cannot, certainly, I don't think, any credit for reducing the quality, the air pollution and particulates that are in the air at this point. It's an ongoing problem for this greater Cincinnati area. Part of it, as you know, has to do with the fact that we are in a river valley and the lack of relatively modest amount of wind coming through here. So there are several environmental factors that are in some ways beyond the control of enforcement officers, et cetera. But the good news is it is getting a little bit better step by step through additional enforcement efforts by Hamilton County and other entities that have responsibility for enforcing the Clean Air Act under the auspices of the US EPA and the OEPA have a responsibility working in their own backyard here. But the truth is, it's really one of the toughest nuts to crack. There's been a lot more progress made when it comes to waste reduction, energy conservation, land management, outdoor recreation, local food development, some of those other areas that Green Umbrella has been focusing on, trail development, as I say. So those are areas that have been a little more possible for folks by working better together to actually make measurable improvements and changes in the right direction.
So it would be easier to quantify that progress, and much more difficult to quantify the air and the water. So let me ask you, do you have a feeling that the drinking water, since you're an expert by reason of your long years in this field, is we're not looking at anything near like such as a Flint, Michigan?
No, not at all. I mean, let's be clear. The Greater Cincinnati Water Works is nationally rated as one of the top water districts in the entire country. We were one of the first to have granular activated carbon filtration. We get awards every year nationally for being on the cutting edge. We have to be because we depend on the Ohio River, of course, as the source of our water. So having early warnings about problems coming in, having a 3 or 4 day supply if we have to shut off the valves, having the ability through
which did happen during the Algae crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are looked at as a national leader. People come to study what the Greater Cincinnati Water Works has done to ensure quality water for the citizens in the community. So let's celebrate what is really great, and that's one of the things.
Well, I quite agree with that.
Yeah.
If I could briefly get back to the issue of the air, and I understand after having done this program for many years that it is very difficult for the reasons the topography of the area, the low ambient wind blowing through, and frankly, let's be frank about it, coal-burning electric utilities, they aren't helping.
Absolutely. I mean, look, let's face it, we are in the Ohio River Valley. We are we have more coal-fired plants within the Ohio River Valley than any other major corridor within the United States. I mean, it's just where our energy comes from and how it's generated. There's also a huge problem, of course, as we all know, with emissions that come from vehicles, and we have 75 and 74 and 71 running right through 275. We have concentrations with a lot of backup traffic, a lot of idling. So we have a huge problem with traffic congestion contributing significantly to the air pollution
problem. I agree with
all
that. All that makes sense.
Yeah.
But you would think, based on that scenario, which you so clearly just enunciated, that we would not have made any progress in that, albeit you've made great strides. Let's face it, the water and all those other things you mentioned, much to your credit and to by dint of hard work. But do you think at best we're really just stabilized the situation, that it's not getting significantly worse than it was when you started? Well,
fortunately, it's not getting significantly worse. We have fewer days of exceeding the ozone levels that compared to where we've been over time. So things are moving in the right direction, but certainly not as fast as it needs to. And for folks who have asthma, it's a serious problem, a serious health problem.
A third of the public school children have asthma. Absolutely,
and of course there are also studies that show a direct correlation between the distance that you live from an interstate highway, especially downwind, and the exposure you have, of course, to lead, to particulates that exasperate asthma, et cetera. Children's Hospital has been involved in those studies. The University of Cincinnati Department of Medicine, the Division of Environmental Research and Science have been involved with that. So it is a serious problem.
Brewster, we have to take a break.
Yeah.
Folks, stay with us, please. We will be right back.
The views expressed on Make Peace with Nature are those of the participants and not necessarily those of this station or the program's underwriters.
Many watching will remember former President Lyndon B. Johnson, aka LBJ. He often said that one of his favorite lines was from scriptures. Come now, let us reason together. He liked it, makes sense to me. Now, picking up, on that same theme, it is one of the most interesting accomplishments that you have, given the many years I've done this show. It's always been the them versus us. Trust me, I've interviewed thousands of people, from the Vice President of the United States, most of the heads of the EPA,
Yep.
Governors, senators, congresspeople, and they've had certain ideas, and the Sierra Club, the Isaac Walton League, the Nature Conservancy, others have often been at odds with these people. Yet you pulled it off. You were able to bring people, because you were talking before about power plants. Isn't Duke Energy one of your members?
Yeah, and yes, Duke Energy is a member, Fifth Third Bank, PNC Bank, we have Cintas, we have Macy's, we have a number of major corporations in town that are dues-paying members of Green Umbrella. And again, I'm not the director anymore.
I understand that.
I'm just reflecting what the situation is. And there are areas where those companies may disagree when it comes to certain public policies with others that are involved in the Green Umbrella. But folks choose to say, what is it that we can agree on, that we can work together to make happen? And how can we share best practices and learn from each other and put the pedal to the metal and go further faster in making the area more green and sustainable? The businesses increasingly, as I say, are looking to make sure that they can reduce costs by reducing the waste stream, what they're paying to take to the landfill. Can they internally create policies and procedures that reduce what they otherwise have to pay to deal with? Can they reduce the energy consumption by promoting energy efficiency, conservation, the deployment of renewable energy where appropriate and feasible, because they don't want to waste money on energy. So it's just sort of logical, and also for their own employees, right? When they do the right thing, it's easier to attract and retain the talented young people as a rule, but also older folks like us, me at least, to work for those companies.
What did you just say?
Yeah, I'm just saying that for companies to have...
I thought you said something about older folks.
Older folks, well, I'm talking about myself now that I'm officially retired. So all I'm saying is that a company that is committed and not just talking but doing stuff that's making themselves more sustainable through their waste reduction, energy conservation, et cetera, is going to be more attractive for the talented young people, my kids, for example, to work for. If younger people who are very skilled can work, they can work for all kinds of companies. So there's a heck of a fight going on between companies to attract the best and the brightest to work for them. Having a sustainability program that they're actually serious about is another reason for a young person to want to work for that company. They want to feel that the company shares their values, and being engaged in a serious way, not just window dressing, but actually a serious sustainability plan is a way to attract and retain their own talent. Plus to build market share. The customers who they sell products to are looking for companies that get it about the need to respect and protect the environment.
Now that you are retired from the Green Umbrella, you're certainly not retired from the work of advancing the interest of...
It's not getting paid for, it's great, I love it.
But have you not now established, we have been using your name on the screen here from time to time as the way television works, as a sustainability consultant. What does that mean?
Well, I, for years, have had a consulting business, Brewster Rhoads and Associates, so a variety of people at any given time can be an associate of mine, which just means that I can assist organizations and businesses that might have an interest in becoming more green and sustainable and thinking through perhaps how they can be doing that. You know, most of my time right now is involved as a volunteer working for organizations that I'm on the board of. So Groundwork Cincinnati Mill Creek, I've been on that board for 22 years, an outstanding organization that's been designed from the start to help clean up the Mill Creek, especially from the Ohio River up to 275, the city limits, and also to build an extensive hike and bike trail system that connects the Mill Creek corridor to the communities that are in the watershed. And using the Mill Creek as a laboratory for students in high schools and middle schools throughout the greater Cincinnati area to study biology and riparian zone enhancement and improvement, and help train the next generation of young people to be the folks who will solve water contamination problems, improve watershed improvement problems, it's going to be a heck of a demand. So we're using the Mill Creek as a laboratory to help educate that next generation.
Right. Would you feel comfortable if I ask you about the streetcar?
I mean, yeah, go ahead, sure.
All right. The streetcar is supposed to be, one of the attractive features about it is that it doesn't burn diesel fuel, or even it's a hybrid, runs on batteries or whatever, solar energy, this, that, or the other thing. But it does use electricity. And the electricity is generated, at least currently, most of all, by these very power plants, which are, frankly, a part of the problem. So
Absolutely.
How can the streetcar then be regarded as energy efficient?
Look, you know, I mean,
does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it, but it's the same question. You could ask the same question about a bus system using diesel fuel, et cetera, to drive the bus, or to the extent they use hybrid, they use natural gas. That's always helpful.
Biodiesel.
And propane. Yeah, to some extent, absolutely. But right now, we don't have any clean running public transit systems anywhere in America that I'm aware of, at least.
What about Seattle and Portland?
What's clean?
They have light rail.
They have light rail, but how is it powered? Diesel.
It's powered by electricity.
Well, it depends on which system you're talking about. But again, the electricity, and maybe in there it's hydroelectricity. I mean, hydropower that's providing electricity, I understand. And obviously that's cleaner than diesel fuel. It's cleaner than.
I'm not sure I follow your answer.
Well, no, all I'm saying is that it takes the production of energy in order to
run the streetcar.
To run the streetcar, to run a bus system, to run even a light rail system. So none of them are exactly where we want to be. They're not totally cleanly run and cleanly powered, but they are getting other people out of their vehicles, which are adding much more contamination and pollution and wasting a lot more energy through people being in a single occupancy vehicle car. So we should have more public transit options. We should have more bicycle options throughout the city, which is happening extensively with the introduction of Red Bike, with the development of bike lanes, with the development of off-road hike and bike trail systems in the region that are not only for health and recreation, but for transportation. So I think we're moving step by step in the right direction in this city.
So you are pro streetcar?
Yeah, I'm for. I voted for the streetcar numerous times. I think we should look for more opportunities to get more people out of their private vehicle and into modes of public transportation. Bus, the streetcar is certainly one of them as well. That ultimately is reducing the contamination and pollution we have, reducing the demand for fossil fuels, and that's a good thing in this community.
May I ask, I know the official opening is down, but people who are in your position probably have been invited to ride the streetcar. Have you ridden the streetcar?
No, I haven't, no.
Have you ever been
I've ridden a streetcar in Portland, and I used to take the Reading Railroad every day in Philadelphia when I went to school as I was coming up as a kid. So, yeah, I'm used to rail systems and been on streetcars.
Here is, we only have a short time, and you may feel unqualified to pronounce an opinion on this.
Probably,
but recently, especially in the last year, when so much attention to His Holiness Pope Francis has written an encyclical letter on it, he came to the United States, he addressed Congress, and at one point early on he turned and he looked to President Obama and said, "Thank you for what you're doing about air pollution," and got a huge round of applause. So the whole notion of climate change has been coming more to the fore, as it were. And so I asked the people who were on the show, most recently a man who had written a book which was extremely well written, have we reached the tipping point in terms of, if the oceans, you spend a lot of time in the Everglades, and the seas are getting warmer and ocean levels are rising, and we only have a few minutes, so I'll have to speed up this question. I had a guest last week who had 2 PhDs, among other degrees, and he said that by 2050, you should be especially alarmed about this because you have a home in Florida, I think.
3-foot rise, right?
He said by 2050, 80% of the state of Florida would be underwater. And I suggested, well, then the people watching the show, we only have a minute left, the people watching the show who will be retiring by 2050 won't be able to move to Florida. Do you have any opinion on that?
I don't know. Look, I believe in science, I respect people who are professionals in that field, and I welcome and want more and more of that kind of research to be done. Hopefully what we'll do is put more pressure on public policy makers, on organizations like Green Umbrella, civic and business leaders, to be serious about doing the things that are going to contribute in a positive way to reducing that potential disaster. Imagine that, 3-4 feet. It would, in fact, you're right, wipe out a good chunk of the coastal areas throughout the United States and around the world.
Okay, we're out of time. We'll perhaps have more time next week to chat about this very thing. Thank you for coming. See you next week. We are doing a two-part series with this distinguished gentleman, so if you like what you saw today, please tune in next week. And as always, thank you for taking the time to watch.